Alexa Fischer, and this is the Wishbeads podcast, and I am so delighted. I have Jessica Cording here on the podcast today. She is a registered dietitian. She is an author. She has published her works on amazing platforms like Forbes and Mind Body Green. She also is doing recorded meditations on the Simple Habits app, which is cool. You should check that out. But I'm also crazy excited because she has a book coming out next Tuesday, which is the Little Book of Game Changers. And of course, it's like such an awesome topic in alignment with our Wishwork. So we'll talk all about that. So Jessica, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I can't wait. You know, you had sent me an email about an experience that you had with you. You shared Wishbeads with your mom. And so we'll get into all of that. And I'm just thrilled to also introduce you to my audience, because when we met in New York, whenever that was, and had breakfast, I immediately knew, like, it is in those magical little shifts that suddenly you can start to take control of your mind. You can start feeling better and doing those positive little game-changing steps that really put you in alignment with your happiest life. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. It's funny, when I first heard about Wishbeads, I thought it was so cool because so much of what I practice in my work and what I write about is really about the power of small changes. And there's a lot in my book about, I'm a registered dietitian, so people often look to me primarily for food things, but I became a health coach after being an RD for about 5 years because I realized I needed to have even more skills in helping people actually make lifestyle changes. Like telling someone what to eat is not going to solve that much. You know, what I was noticing people were struggling with was how to stay consistent and stay on track even when they're stressed out or they feel like they have no time or they're dealing with anxiety. And so I really, with my patients, my clients, what I was finding useful was just focusing on making one tiny tweak at a time and just building there. And not all food stuff either. You know, it was like, okay, so you're stress eating in the afternoons, but what's stressing you out?
Right.
And,
we're holistic beings, I mean, everything is cause and effect.
Yeah. Like it wasn't going to do my patients any good or my clients to say like, well, then just don't stress eat or like eat these blueberries instead.
Right. Or better yet, like, just don't be stressed.
Yeah, when I hear a healthcare professional or like read an article where they're like, reduce your stress level, I'm like, well, great, but how? Like, that drives me nuts when I see that.
Yeah, and I also think that, stress is also, it's energy. Maybe it's a heightened energetic experience, and there are factors all around us. It doesn't really matter anymore where you live. You could be in the heart of nature and be stressed out about ticks. You could be right in an urban environment and be stressed out about hearing sirens all the time. But the real question is, what is our habitual stress responses? And what are those tiny little behavioral shifts that you can do that just put you a little bit more in an area of grace? Just a little bit more in an area, like a little camp that's just slightly more positive, a little more life affirming, It's
so true. And like being open to being in that more positive space.
Yeah.
Notice that's a huge, I've had to deal with like learning that it's okay to want to feel good. It's okay to feel good, and then like taking those shifts and just having faith that they are going to get you there.
Yes.
When it feels really me.
Yes. And I gotta say, Jess, like I also feel that we're in a culture right now that is so accustomed to pain. And I mean pain in the sense of, stress being a form of pain, but also divisiveness and rhetoric, behavioral language. There's so many things that are more culturally acceptable now that become the norm, that when you're someone who chooses not to drink, I don't drink at all. I don't do any type of drugs because I just made a choice. It's not like I'm a recovered alcoholic or anything. I just stepped back and realized that those things didn't make me feel any better, ever, not even a little bit. So I went, oh, well, I could just make a choice and say, well, that's not for me. And I also really value the clarity that comes with that. I value the clarity in the moment, and I value the conversations that I remember, and I value waking up in the morning feeling more clear-headed. So I'll just make that choice, But there's also language. So if you surround yourself with people that are complaining a lot, or they're really like, even like passionate about politics, but in an angry way, it really affects my body. I like to talk about current events. I like to be inquisitive about how can we make this world a better place. But boy, isn't it like the pain body just kind of dancing in today's climate right now?
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. And it's just people are on, I think a lot of people, and this is what I've encountered a lot in my work and honestly in my own life and with the people in it, a lot of us don't even realize how stressed we are or how much pain we are. And actually, a lot of the work that I did on this book really stemmed from an experience I had when my father was first diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Oh, it's a terrible type of cancer, yeah.
Oh, it was, I mean, like, I would not wish that on my enemies. That's what, like, penile thrombosis is for, or, like, I don't know, like, these other, like, smaller, like, more ridiculous ailments that aren't so difficult. And so, you know, so it was, I mean, it was interesting because on the one hand, with a diagnosis like that, when you know that, at least at that point, and I think this is still the case, that nobody had survived that illness, you know, I think it kind of it shone a light really clearly on what was really important, which was to be together as a family and to help my dad be as comfortable as possible. But on the flip side of that, it was very much, you know, I left my job at the hospital so that I could be helping take care of my dad instead of, you know, covering patient floors every weekend and taking him to doctor's appointments in between. And I was, you know, at that time he was getting treatment at a hospital around the corner from where I had a corporate wellness gig. So I was always taking my lunch break to go check on him. And I was just not sleeping. You know, I was checking all the boxes of like, well, I'm still exercising. I'm still eating well. You know, I'm journaling every day. I'm meditating, like when I go to yoga, but I wasn't sleeping. And I ended up getting really, really sick. And I wasn't, you know, I wasn't factoring in the fact that, like, I think even I got swept up in that whole, like, there is this other big thing happening. And it kind of numbed me out to all the other, you know, like, I wasn't really tuned into my own health as much. And it actually took I ended up with an infection in a fingernail from a manicure I got for my sister's wedding.
Wow.
My immune system was so shot because I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't fight it off. And it turned out I was put on some antibiotics to treat the infection after getting the fingernail taken off. And like, I didn't know I was allergic to it. So I'm thinking, oh, it's eczema. I'm fine. I'm just stressed out and it's just eczema. And so I show up, you know, but then I realized I'm this full body head to toe rash. My face is starting to swell. My eyes are starting to swell shut. And, you know, so I go to the health center and they're like, no, we need to stop this reaction you're having. Like,
yeah, pronto, like right this second.
I got so lucky. I was so checked out of my own body because I was so concerned with taking care of him that it was a big wake up call. I literally had an entire day to like sit there in a Benadryl stupor and just really think about what was and what was not working at that time.
Yeah.
And get real about what my sources of stress were, the things that I could and could not control, and start to kind of do that work of making the shifts one at a time. And it was a process, you know, but it's funny. I you know, I was 32 at the time, and I was noticing like all of a sudden I had all these wacky food cravings that I'd never had before. I was craving specifically, and I talk a lot about this in my book, so I won't, you know, go too far down the rabbit hole, but like a lot of foods that when I dug into the research about what nutrients were in there was a lot of things like omega-3 fatty acids and monounsaturated fatty acids, antioxidants, nutrients and compounds that specifically help offset the effects of stress hormone, cortisol. And it was like my body was like asking for help to, you know, deal with all the stress coming in. Yeah. And it was an eye-opening experience just about how our body, you know, even for me, who had been a healthcare professional for like almost 10 years at that point, was like, still learning about that, and just that the body.
And I don't even think it ever really goes away. I think that pain and discomfort, dis-ease, is actually a great teacher.
Yes.
It's a great indicator of, where am I? Compassionately reflecting on where am I? What is not working for me? And then with that lens of compassion, okay, now what do I need? Your body knew like there was certain foods that was going to be in alignment with what you needed to heal and to sort of de-stress. But our body has wisdom if we give ourselves some space to just listen, just to listen to it.
Which is so hard in our culture today because there's always noise and chatter and screens and messages and notifications. It can be really hard to tune in.
Yeah. And also, look, you and I were also, right before we started this, we're just sort of checking in about our own busy lives. And like, oh, I'm doing this, so I travel and I'm doing this, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a writer, I'm a freelancer, blah, blah. And because there's so much messaging right now projected, especially to young people, about like, you can have it all, do it all looks so great on Instagram and, van life, and you can, that there's this, and I come across a lot of young people that are like, oh, I don't like my job, it's not fulfilling me and changing the world. When did we send the message that everybody has to change the world by like, I don't know, becoming an entrepreneur or starting, I don't know, do you know what I mean? Like we've lost our common sense of like, your job isn't necessarily to put a stamp on changing the world. Be a happy, decent person and you are changing the world. Being healthy and just connecting with friends and enjoying life, you're changing the world. I think we've gotten very far away from that message, right?
Oh my gosh. I was having a conversation about this with, actually, I feel like this is a conversation I've been having a lot lately with colleagues. And I co-work out of a space a few days a week where it's a lot of other, female entrepreneurs. And some of them are a little bit younger. And then there's those of us who are like in our mid 30s and on. And we're like, how did this happen? Like, what's with all this pressure? And, every job has, the gripes of that job and the things that people in that industry kind of like complain about and stuff. And it's so interesting that even in the entrepreneur world, there's also that version of it. And
totally.
Yeah. And it's like, whatever became wrong with just being fulfilled in your personal life and just kind of spreading positive energy with your loved ones and connecting with people and just experiencing your life. When my dad got sick, it's funny, that year, every year around the new year, I pick a word to focus on. And that year I had chosen the word live. This was before I knew he was, going to be getting sick halfway through that year. But my goal in setting that, focusing on that word was like, this is the year I'm going to actually, I'm building this life for myself. Because that was always my excuse when I was working 7 days a week, 8 different income streams. I was like, I'm building a life. I'm building something in the future. But I hadn't given myself any space to actually inhabit that life, actually live in there. So that was, but I think too, a lot of people don't talk about the anxiety that comes with being an entrepreneur or carving your own path. And I see, and I fall into this trap too sometimes of putting so much pressure on myself. And I think that our culture, it's really, I'm so happy that Instagram wasn't around when I was in college or even at school. Like, I see these like young women coming out of, the nutrition programs and they're already a brand. And like, that's just so much pressure. Like, what if they want to change course? Or they want to try something new and feeling like you have to be a fully baked business before you even know who you are. Like,
no, I know. I went to this event yesterday with a friend who's 16. So we were sort of chatting about life. And again, these phrases were tripping out of her tongue, just thinking about college and what she's going to do. And I said, can I just remind you that you do not need to know what you're going to do with your life. You don't. You're supposed to be curious about what you could do for at least for the next 10 years. I've done many different things and, I'm in my mid 40s. So it evolves and you're meant to let it evolve. And I agree with you, this pressure, we have to be the ones to be honest about what that looks like. And that really to miss, I mean, I think you and I talked about this when we had breakfast the first time. I mean, I am way more chill now at, 47 than I ever was when I was in my 20s and my 30s, because I was just like you, like building, and I'm going to do it all, and I have this career, and then I'm going to launch something new, and I'm going to have some kids, and in hindsight, it's like, oh my God, go to the movies, go out to dinner, like enjoy life, like have a Scrabble night, it's all going to be fine. And what a shame to miss just having fun, just having good old fashioned fun and adventures and things like that. You don't have to record it, and you don't have to share it, and nobody needs to like it. Just be in it. And I have to tell you, when you're in the business of helping people wish, I have to be more transparent about wishing is not wishing for that big, like my career to change the world, or all of this wealth I need to create. It's actually wishing for how you want to feel, how you want to show up in the world, and giving yourself that grace and opportunity to do that, to be that, to make space for it in our own little way. Even if I was just talking to another female entrepreneur, like before this recording, and she too was saying, like, I'm just always thinking about money, and I'm thinking about the demands and my team and this and that. And she said, and I just want some space. And so I said, okay, but what 10 minutes of space and grace can you give yourself today? We all have 10 minutes,
It's so hard to like remember that. It's like, there's that 10 minutes that you might be used to spending scrolling on social media. You could spend that 10 minutes to do something that feeds your soul. And it's so hard to give ourselves permission to do that.
Yeah. And I love that you're showing up in that little tiny game-changing way to share your insights. And I love that it expands beyond the nutritional aspects of it, that it's so much more, because in order to really change the way you feel about food, the way you feel about yourself, the way you feel about your body, the way you feel about whatever, it is all these tiny little changes that you can do, which makes all the difference in the world. So yay. So everybody get this book. Next Tuesday, January 14th, is when it is out into the world. So pre-order or get on the bandwagon, check out on the blurb, there'll be a link to the Amazon page, and let's support Jess, because she deserves it, and you deserve to have all those game-changing things happen to you. Yeah, that's my pitch.
I appreciate that, because that book, like, by the time it comes out, it'll have been 2 years in the making, but I really wrote it because I couldn't find anything like it. I really needed a book like that. Like, I wanted something where I could open it to any chapter, like, and have it be a short chapter that I could read, like, when I was trying to fall asleep, something that would be like engaging and like informative and interesting, but like not preachy, not with some long detailed thing I had to follow. And
right.
I think in the wellness space too, there's, again, that pressure with entrepreneurship. So much content out there that's fear mongering and designed to make people like feel like they have to buy some expensive thing to be, to arrive at like, well, or like there's so many different, it's just so much pressure. Yeah. So I would do something that was just sidestepping all that BS and just being like, I'm a real person, you're a real person, these are tips for real people.
For real people. And guess what? You're going to feel really good as a result of it. So there you go. Good. Well, I want to find out, speaking of small, powerful steps and with intention, tell me about, because we actually genuinely haven't discussed this yet, about your Wishbeads experience. And sort of, I know when we spoke about it initially and you got your own, that, you loved the idea, but is there anything sort of, specific or personal or whatever that worked for you when you had a sort of a tangible reminder of your intentions?
Yeah, I have been interested in this stuff since I was a teenager. Like when I was in high school, I even like worked briefly for a woman who made like healing gemstone jewelry. So I remember like studying all the different like stones and their therapeutic benefits and all this stuff. And even then I was like, I don't need to know if it's real, but having that tangible reminder, in a piece of jewelry or a stone on your desk, and just sort of associating it with that particular word or energy or emotion is really powerful. We're talking about entrepreneurship and just like how a lot of people don't talk about the anxieties involved. Like, I'll be honest, like when I left my clinical job and then when I left my corporate job, to focus more full-time on writing, content creation. Like, I do a lot of consulting with different like tech companies, food and lifestyle brands. I do a lot of behind the scenes work because I feel like that's a way that I can make a contribution and make sure that what people are reading, what they're, being encouraged to buy, like stuff out there, it's based in science and it's something that's going to serve people well. But that said, like there was a huge adjustment period. I mean, to be fully honest, like my income one year to the next was like cut in half because I didn't have that same steady paycheck, and I was devoting a lot more time and energy to building things and being, becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable, but acknowledging that good things take time. Like if we were like talking earlier with I feel like there is this idea out there that you have a business idea and then magically it launches and it's a success instantly. And that's not true. And I'm sure, there are a lot of,
it does. Yeah, it does most certainly take time. You and I could talk a lot about that. Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, the beads that I decided to use are I think it's the matte jade,
yeah.
which had a lot to do with,
wealth and wisdom.
Yeah, and a few things that I was really that really spoke to me for many reasons, because as I'm sure anyone out there who's read a book or left a job or started a business, like kind of that, especially if you're in a field or on a path where you don't have a ton of people who did it before you, and you can't really just follow their pattern. I was definitely craving a little bit of I don't know, help with making sure I was making confident, intentional steps forward that would be in the right direction. But I have been doing mantras and journaling. I remember starting it in high school before I realized it was there was a word for it.
Yeah.
But every morning I write in my journal, and I write some affirmations, or I will write different things. I have like my little list of things I write down every morning, in addition to dream journaling and all that. But so I was really, I'm at a place in my life where I'm really looking to build more stability for my future, and finding a way to make what I do sustainable. And I wrote down that So I really like the exercises that encourage you to think about how you're feeling and really get in touch with that feeling and sort of what you're seeing around you and really tuning in. Because that was very helpful to me in becoming more receptive to attracting wealth. But I was really clear when I wrote my wish that, I wrote as part of my wish that I wanted to attract work that would align with my core values. Mm-hmm. And support my personal, professional, and financial goals. Because for me, and I joke that I'm an elder millennial because I think I fall in like the old side of the millennial category. But yeah, so for me, maybe complete fulfillment in a job is not something I was conditioned to expect. But I will say that the older I've gotten, focusing on doing work that aligns with my core values has become a really helpful compass to have.
Oh, totally. I think it's a very healthy compass, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so what I noticed though, within the first, it was wild. I went, I guess about 2-3 weeks into, doing the Wishwork,
yeah.
And I started changing. I get a lot of emails from brands, companies, who it's interesting because in my world, I because of my writing and the outlets I write for, it's not always clear what my role is. A lot of people think I'm on staff at different places, or they think that I have any power whatsoever with like editorial decisions.
Right.
And so I get a lot of inquiries from companies wanting me to feature their, new products, or, oh, we've got this new brand. We really want you to write about it in this company. And I'm legally not allowed to do that in a lot of cases. Or, when I do, I have to be very mindful of how it's done in order, again, to make sure it checks off my inner compass, appropriately, but also legally it's tricky for freelancers. And but I started, whenever I would come across a company that I was interested in working with in some capacity, because this would happen where there would be a company I would encounter and they would want me to write about them, and I couldn't offer them that. And but I started thinking like, well, what are some other ways that we might work together? Because I really like what you're doing, and even though I can't support you in this way, other skills I have in my wheelhouse, let's have a conversation. And it was so interesting because literally, within 2 weeks, I had, like, for example, like one like 5-figure project that I landed through that, and a few other like smaller, really interesting ones that, like, maybe not on that like financial level, but still just like creating really meaningful, interesting content, or helping a company that I really care about, develop an even better product.
Mm-hmm.
So, things, it was so interesting to see that once I became open to it and having more conversations, it was like, and I got, even though I canceled the listing service that I was using for my coaching business, because I wanted to take a little bit of a step back.
Yeah.
I started getting inquiries like crazy from people who were finding me organically, and people I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. They're like, hey, I've been thinking about you. And so it was just so interesting all at once.
Yeah. So I love that. And I'm so happy for you first and foremost. But I also think that part of what happens when you begin to give yourself the gift of just wishing, you enter into a very playful space inwardly of possibility. That's all it is. It's just saying, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. You know what? I'm going to do today's wish work just to see if I notice something else. And that invitation to yourself is what sets the magic in motion. Where, could I sit there and say to you, well, thank you, that is because of the wish work? I have no idea. You may have just been so kind of in your headspace of doing the same old, that when you got those contacts before, you just were like, oh, here's another one of those things that they don't understand, that as a freelancer, I'm legally not able to do it. Next. But maybe because you had set your own intention of like, maybe there is alignment in other ways. Maybe there is financial abundance in other ways. All of a sudden, this other new lane of possibility opens. And the more you think it, the more you like embrace it, that's a possibility, the more it comes to you. I mean, that's how it goes.
Yeah, I would definitely do that. And I think having the visual reminder, check your email, you look down at your wrist, you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm going to be focusing on this right now.
Yeah.
But my mother, and I don't remember if we chatted about this at breakfast, but my mom is a hypnotherapist. She's also a psychotherapist. But she got into therapy because she became a certified hypnotherapy practitioner, or certified hypnotherapist, back in like the 90s, and eventually got her LCSW and now has a really thriving practice. But she would always say with smoking cessations, and I remember this really stuck out to me as a teenager, and probably what kept me from starting to smoke cigarettes. But she was like, you have to want to quit. Like, you have to be open to quitting, open to changing, and that goes for breaking bad habits, but I think it also goes for being open to abundance, being open to positive things.
Yes.
So, especially when we're stuck in that, culture of pain where it's like, no, it doesn't work if it doesn't feel awful.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I have to tell you, sometimes, very rarely, because usually people that I talk to are really into Wishbeads and they're really excited to get them either as a gift or whatever. But sometimes I will come across people that will love it. And then I say, well, did you write your wish? And they'll say no. And that's an interesting moment, right? Where the invitation is there, the excitement and the enthusiasm, the appreciation for the object but boy, they won't give themselves just the gift of wishing, you know? And I think that that willingness of what you're talking about, you have to want it. You have to allow yourself that leap into the unknown, because sometimes there's so much fear that, like, what if I wish and my wish doesn't come true? Maybe it's better not to wish at all. And to that I say, really? Really? Is it better not to wish? How about just wish and maybe it'll come true? Why not? Or just wish for something just slightly more in the direction of what you want, you know? So I think that there is this, you know, and hopefully, you know, with as Wishbeads spreads and as people like you are putting, you know, the same very kindred material out into the world, that's just like, listen, you don't have to give up everything, you know, divorce your spouse, sell everything and go get a van or go to an ashram in India. You can make these little things, little shifts, wish a little bit, and you'll find you'll start to tap into the natural happiness that is your birthright.
Absolutely. But giving yourself space to like actually hear that inner voice.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've had to learn this too, you know, but the idea of like, oh, taking a day off on the weekend or 3 minutes for meditation. Like when you think, you know, it's like, but
Tiny.
it works.
Tiny. You know, it's funny. I went on a retreat. I don't go, I treat myself to my own, you know, retreats that I attend, not that I just host, but, and there was one retreat that I know, flying there to this like beautiful location, I had all of these things. Like, so I was going to do all these things because it was a writing workshop and it was a writing retreat, and I was going to write. And I like put all the things on this 1 week, you know, away from my family and away from my other businesses. And what ended up unfolding in this magical retreat was what I would call, what then I then started to name the delete retreat. Like as every day would pass, I'm like, I don't think I really need to do that now. And I would just delete one thing. Like that's what my body was yearning for, the permission to take things off my plate. And since that was last January, I've really said, if I really imagine how I'm going to run my business, I know what I need to do. I know that I do want to run my business with grace and ease and abundance. I know that I want to align myself with amazing wish leaders, people that are going to like just run with this. I know what I want to do, which means that I also need to identify the things that I don't really have to do. Maybe someone could do better than me, you know? And I'm telling you, my evolution as an entrepreneur, and I've got way more years on you than this, is that it does take time, and it does take compassion. It does take ease, and it does take breaks. And I don't mean that like a day off on the weekend should be mandatory. Yeah, it does take breaks, you know, and it's funny. People think it's like, oh, such freedom to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. Ha ha ha. You know, you go get your paycheck and be so happy. Like find a job that's just a great job. It doesn't have to be the end all be all. Learn some things, meet people, have some new skills, get a paycheck, maybe some benefits. There's definitely a place for that.
Yeah. Oh man, when I was dating, I remember very well. This was years ago now, but like this guy found out that I worked for myself, and he was like, "Oh, that must be so nice, just being able to take a break whenever you want or sleep as late as you want." I was like, "Really? You're kidding, right?" And I never actually went on a date. This was an online dating, like
online dating, and you're like, next.
Yeah, does not get me or will not.
Right. But I do think that to be honest about that is really what's important, you know, to really share, pull back the curtain and just say, it's not that it's bad or good. This is our choice. I wouldn't change my life for anything. I love the life that I've created. But I also know that I'm so many years into this, and I've been a teacher, an online course instructor for over 10 years, and then created a company. And I still teach online. Like that's still something I do, but I'm glad I didn't know when I started that it took as much time, but I would be remiss teaching my students right now, like, look at me, I make residual money and I'm helping tens of thousands of people around the world. I would never tell people that. I would never pitch my teaching around that notion, because it's not fair. Things take time. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't do them. It just means that you should pace your expectations appropriately. In the same way that I can't tell somebody, oh, your wish is going to come true in 21 days. That's not the point. You're going to learn how to see life in a different way in 21 days, and cool things might show up right away. But it is a new way of being, which puts you in the driver's seat. And that's the same with your book. You know, little game changers change literally how you're going to wake up in the morning and how you're going to go to bed at night and how you're going to, you know, choices that you're going to make when you open up the refrigerator. Like, it's just the little stuff, but you're in control. You're the one who's in control.
Yeah, we are, you know, there are always going to be those things we can't control, but when it comes to those little shifts, like I always tell my clients and remind myself, you know, you can't necessarily change the things that are stressing you out. You can't take those things out of the equation, but what you can change is your response.
Yeah.
You know, and making sure that you're supporting yourself and being honest with yourself about what you need. And like, I had to be honest with myself that I was not cut out to work full time in a hospital, because I kept sneaking away to like write when I was on breaks or taking calls with journalists on my lunch break. I was like, this is not sustainable. I will not, this is great work for someone else, but I need to be doing other work.
Yeah. And I think it's in those moments where you start to get curious about your reaction. Those are the great teachings. Those are the hits from the universe to be like, hey, over here. And I think I told you this, it's sort of a story I tell a bit about my own journey, is that I was professionally acting and I was acting with consistency. I was doing what I thought I wanted to do. And yet I really didn't feel like I belonged as a full-time actress. You know, I love acting, but if that was the only thing I was going to do with my life, that was not for me. I knew it was not fulfilling to me. And that's when I sent out an intention to the world. Okay, give me a sign, give me something. What am I supposed to be doing? And I think that when you start to go, when you kind of like dance with the divine, like I'm here on the planet. I've created this beautiful life. I feel very fortunate for that life. What now? What now? What next? What next? And I think that from that point of view, life can be, you know, even in the challenges, my God, looking backwards, the challenges were my best points of expansion. They were, every one of them. And some of them were gnarly, but that they made me more of who I am and made me more committed to what I want to create. So we can't also pretend that like, we have to avoid pain. If you're in pain, get curious about that pain, get curious about that dis-ease, about that discomfort, and figure out what is going to put you back in your state of bliss.
Yeah.
Balance. Yeah.
Balance it's funny. Balance is one of those things. It's like, we're told it doesn't exist, but then we're told we have to go find it. And like, I've just decided it's different for everybody, what feels, and it shifts life too. Like you couldn't pay me to go back to my 20s, but like the things that felt balanced then are so different from what feels balanced now and what will feel balanced, you know, in 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Very elusive. But if you can see when you wake up happy and you go to bed happy, when you really look at what behaviors work for you or what drag you down and just make those tiny game-changing shifts, when you go after a little bit of wish work, you know, you start to realize that the magic is in the little moments. And if we can remind ourselves to get our faces out of our phones and start connecting with people, that is the deliciousness of life. It is. It's just the deliciousness of life. So thank you, Jess, for being on the show. But thank you for sharing and showing up in the way that you do. And my goodness, I can't wait to see what unfolds for you. And I am so proud of you for launching this book and writing the book. And I'm proud of you. I'm honoring you. I'm seeing you and appreciating your honesty, the way that you share your wisdom with your readers and your clients and the people that are privileged to know your work, because we're here to serve one another, right? Yep. And it's just awesome. Keep up the beautiful work.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll stay in touch. And to anyone watching or listening, do check out the show notes. You can get Jess's new book, the little book of Game Changers, which I know is chock full of awesome information. And that's it. It's in those tiny little adjustments that you can start seeing the miracles of transformation. So go get that book and keep wishing and stay positive, because energy begets the like energy. So even though life is full of drama, we can choose to be the lull in the storm, right, people? We can do this. All right. So happy New Year. Set your intentions, get mindful, and you totally got this. Let 2020 be a magical year of visioning. 2020 vision.